He signed the papers on my behalf while I lay unconscious on the operating table, terminating our child, then, that very same day, popped champagne to celebrate a new beginning for another woman. I didn't cry or make a scene. I didn't confront him or tear everything apart. I pieced the shredded abortion consent form back together, preserved every scrap of evidence of their asset transfers and collusion, and when they thought I was depressed, compliant, and no longer of value, I personally delivered the files to the courts, the banks, and the board of directors. They thought they had taken a child and destroyed a woman. They had no idea I was coming for their entire world. The wheels of my suitcase came to a dull stop on the polished marble floor. The house was unnervingly quiet. The faint citrus scent from the diffuser I'd left behind was gone, replaced by a cold, cloying sweetness, an unfamiliar perfume. I set my briefcase on the console by the door and swept my gaze across the living room. Everything looked exactly as it had when I left 3 days ago, perfect. Like a magazine show home. Lucas's preferred style, minimalist, icy, stripped of any excess warmth. I headed toward the study, intending to file the documents I'd brought back. My steps halted at the doorway. The trash can beside the shredder was full. Not the normal, everyday kind of full, but crammed with twisted, narrow strips of paper, nearly spilling over. That wasn't normal. Lucas was a neat freak. The trash in this house was never allowed to get this full, especially not in the study. On impulse, I crouched down. The paper strips were fresh. I picked up a few and began fitting them together. They weren't ordinary documents. The paper was a special stock, with a pale blue watermark and a hospital letterhead. My fingers froze. Consent form, my heart clenched violently. I sped up, almost grabbing at the strips, pulling more out of the bin and spreading them across the floor. My fingers trembled with force, yet my mind was eerily cold and clear, like assembling a high-stakes financial model. Word by word, the text emerged. Patient, Evelyn Hart. Procedure, termination of pregnancy. Authorized signature, Lucas Hart, spouse. Date, October 23, 2024. The day I was wheeled onto the operating table. The day I hovered on the edge of failed anesthesia and heard a doctor say, in a flat, indifferent voice, "Your husband has already signed. We've chosen the medication with the least impact on the embryo. Termination is advised." The day I believed it was a natural miscarriage, when I woke up to Lucas holding my hand, eyes red, telling me, "We're still young. We'll have another." The paper scraps were cold, biting into my fingertips. I felt no pain, only a rush of blood to my head, a loud buzzing in my ears. My gaze shifted deeper into the trash can. A crumpled piece of cardboard revealed a corner of ornate gold embossing. I pulled it out. A custom champagne wooden crate, empty, on the lid. In elegant cursive handwriting, the ink still looking fresh, for Lily. Celebrate the new beginning. Lily, the capable assistant who always looked at Lucas with open admiration at the company's annual gala. The girl my mother-in-law, Margaret, had once mentioned casually, bright, good family background. The date. A delivery slip was affixed to the bottom of the crate. Today, 3 p.m., 2 hours before my plane landed. The date on the abortion consent form. The date of the champagne celebration. The day my unborn child was forcibly stripped from my body by medication, he was preparing champagne for another woman's new beginning. All sound disappeared. There was only the heavy thud of my own heartbeat, crashing against my ribs. Again and again, I heard the key turn in the front door. Light footsteps. Lucas's familiar, gentle voice followed, "Evelyn, you're back? Why didn't you turn on the lights?" I quickly gathered all the shredded paper from the floor, along with the champagne crate, and shoved them into my oversized work tote. My movements were so fast they seemed to cut the air. Then I stood, smoothing the wrinkles in my dress. Lucas walked into the study and flipped on the light. He wore a perfectly tailored shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, an expensive watch visible on his wrist. His face held just the right blend of fatigue and concern. "How was the trip? You look pale." He stepped closer, reaching out as he always did to put an arm around my shoulders. I shifted slightly and avoided him. His hand paused midair for a fraction of a second. A faint crease appeared between his brows, then smoothed out. His tone turned patient, indulgent. "Tired again? Or not feeling well? Don't be so emotional, it's not good for your health." Emotional, his most frequently used label for me. Every doubt, every sadness, Every moment of unease brought on by his neglect was effortlessly sealed away with those 3 words. "Lucas is back?" Margaret's voice came from the living room, always so perfectly timed. She walked in, her well-maintained face expressionless. Her gaze swept over me, then softened when it landed on Lucas. "Evelyn's back too. Good timing, the soup's been simmering." She paused, as if just remembering something, and said in a cool, almost clinical tone, "What happened with the baby is in the past. Don't dwell on it. You're still young, restoring your health is what matters. That child, honestly, it wasn't the right time anyway. Lucas just took over the Asia-Pacific division. He's overwhelmed as it is. A child would only have been a burden." Her words were like a rusted file, grinding slowly and brutally into my already bleeding chest. I looked at them, my husband and my mother-in-law, one defining me as emotional, the other defining my dead child as a burden. Inside my bag, the shredded documents and the champagne crate pressed against my arm. That cold, hard sensation strangely suppressed the metallic taste rising in my throat. I lifted my head and even managed a faint smile at Lucas. "It's nothing, probably just jet lag. I'll go wash my face." Lucas visibly relaxed. In his eyes was that familiar look of approval. "See, she's sensible after all." He probably thought that, just like countless times before. I had swallowed the barbs and let them pass. I turned and walked toward the kitchen. As I passed the liquor cabinet, I stopped, took out his favorite single malt scotch, and selected a crystal tumbler. I poured the whiskey, the amber liquid swirling under the lights. Then I carried the glass over to Lucas, who was already seated on the sofa, head lowered as he scrolled through his phone. "Have a drink," I said, holding it out to him. "You look tired too." He looked up at me in mild surprise, then smiled and took the glass, sipping it. "You're always so thoughtful." He leaned back, his posture loosening. "How did the project go this time? They didn't give you a hard time, did they?" "It was fine." I sat in the armchair across from him, my tone even. "Everything went by the book." "That's good." He swirled the whiskey in his glass. "You don't need to worry about things at home, Mom will take care of it. You just get more rest." Deep in his eyes was a trace of relaxed certainty, the calm of a man in control, reassured when a piece has returned to its proper place on the board. Margaret came out carrying a bowl of soup. When she saw the scene, the corner of her mouth curved up almost imperceptibly. They must have thought the storm had passed, that I had reverted to the sensible, big picture, easy to manage Evelyn. Lucas finished the drink. I stood and took the empty glass from him. "Another?" "No." He waved a hand and got to his feet. "I've got some emails to deal with. You should turn in early." He headed for the study, his steps light. I stood there under the lights, holding the empty glass. The warmth of his fingertips still lingered on the crystal. The raging mix of fury, grief, and the agony of betrayal inside me froze into something solid, harder than steel. Beneath that ice lay molten lava, seething, capable of melting everything. Emotion? No. Emotion is for people who still expect something, who still have weak spots. It's something only the weak need, and I had just buried my last trace of softness with my own hands. Late at night, Lucas's steady breathing drifted from the master bedroom. I rose without a sound, went into the guest room, and locked the door. I opened the laptop I never let out of my sight, unlocked by fingerprint, and logged into an encrypted email account that had been dormant for nearly 2 years. It was my ghost account, tied to the highest security channels I'd used back when I worked in risk control at a top investment bank. Before my marriage, Lucas didn't know it existed. Even I had almost forgotten this tool, as if it belonged to a previous life. The inbox was empty, just a few system welcome emails. I composed a new message, addressed to my regular email account. Subject, Heart Medical Group, Internal Risk Control Memorandum. The body was blank. Attachments, clear photos I'd taken of the reconstructed scraps of the abortion consent form, close-ups of the champagne crate and delivery slip, and the electronic version of my abortion record I'd just retrieved from the medical app, its signature page deliberately concealed under my name. The dates matched perfectly. Click. Send. 1 week later. The Lucas Family Foundation's charity gala. I wore the conservative, fail-safe black gown he had chosen for me and entered on his arm. Crystal chandeliers blazed overhead. Silk gowns and tailored suits brushed past one another. Compliments flowed without pause. Lucas was completely at ease. Then I saw her. Lily. She was in a cherry blossom pink gown studded with crystals, like a star suddenly caught in a spotlight, standing at the side of the stage. She clung intimately to Lucas's mother's arm, and Margaret patted her hand, smiling with a warmth I barely recognized. The host took the stage, voice brimming with enthusiasm. And next, let us welcome the key driving force behind tonight's charity project and the inspiration muse of Mr. Lucas himself, Miss Lily, inspiration muse. Applause rippled through the crowd, mixed with suggestive laughter. Cameras swung toward them. Lucas didn't deny it. He turned his head and smiled at Lily. The tenderness in that smile was something I hadn't seen in a long time. I had been seated at the farthest corner table, alongside several women I didn't recognize at all, clearly filler guests. In the introductions, my identity had been reduced to a vague Mrs. Lucas. Lily, meanwhile, was Miss Lily, the inspiration muse. Lily lifted her glass and glided through the crowd toward me. Evelyn, cheers to you. Her voice was sweet and bright, but the light in her eyes was sharp with provocation. Thank you for being so understanding. Lucas often says you're very magnanimous. I raised my glass of orange juice and touched it lightly to hers. Understanding, I repeated, my voice steady. Of course. My gaze fell on her raised wrist. There was a delicate diamond bracelet there, not a typical piece of jewelry, but a distinctive emblem, a heart encircled by a caduceus. I recognized it immediately. The New Genesis Private Medical Foundation. 3 years ago, Lucas had wanted me to approve a large investment from a family trust one managed into that foundation, calling it a high-risk, high-return medical play. I'd reviewed their books and proposals and vetoed it outright. Unclear fund flows, questionable return structure. Lucas had exploded, accusing me of being inflexible and blocking his strategy. Margaret had been icy for days. In the end, the investment died, so the foundation was Lily's, or at least, partly hers. Following my gaze, Lily gave her wrist a smug little shake. This? A small gift from Lucas. He said it was to commemorate our first collaboration. She leaned closer, lowering her voice, her perfume enveloping me. Evelyn, some opportunities, once you miss them, they're gone, just like a child. Once it's gone, it's gone. Her words were a poison-tipped needle, striking with perfect precision at the most fragile old wound in my heart. Pain exploded through my limbs. My fingers tightened around the glass, knuckles widening. Margaret appeared beside us at some point, her voice not loud, yet clear enough for several nearby tables to hear. Evelyn, why are you pale again? Are you feeling unwell? I told you long ago you should stay home and rest. At events like this, your emotions tend to fluctuate. You're only forcing yourself by coming. Lucas looked over as well, his brow creasing with impatience. Evelyn, if you're not feeling well, have the driver take you home. Don't push yourself here. The women at my table exchanged glances, some concern, but more pity, and a faint, barely concealed disdain. See? The wife who no longer pleases her husband, disliked by her mother-in-law, and can't even hold herself together in public. The curve of Lily's smile deepened. I set the orange juice down, took a deep breath, then turned toward Margaret and Lucas and gave them a smile so docile it was almost meek. Mom's right, I am a little dizzy. I turned to Lucas, my tone even carrying a hint of apology. Honey, I'll head home first then. You stay and entertain Miss Lily and Mom properly. Don't let me spoil the evening. Lucas was clearly caught off guard, as if he hadn't expected this reaction. Then the irritation in his eyes was replaced by satisfaction. All right, be careful on the way back, he said, his voice softening. I stood and left, my back straight, my steps steady. Only after I got into the car, once all eyes were shut out, did I allow myself to lean back against the seat and close my eyes. My heart was still aching, but my mind had already shifted into another mode. I went home, locked the study door, opened my computer, and logged into that encrypted email account. I pulled up every backup file I'd kept from 3 years ago on the New Genesis Foundation, including the original fund flow records that had first raised my suspicions and were later quietly cleaned up. Data streamed across the screen. Complex cross-border transfers, shell companies, related party transactions. The traces had been scrubbed thoroughly, but not perfectly. Certain numerical jumps, certain account linkages to a seasoned risk control professional. They glimmered like fireflies in the dark. I traced them to a secondary account of an offshore company. Recently, Several small, seemingly irrelevant transfers had flowed in. The recipient information was vague, but when I ran the association paths through my algorithm, one blurred abbreviated name matched Lily's overseas private account. The amounts didn't move the main books, but the timing was exquisite. Right when Lily began appearing frequently at Lucas's side. Right when Margaret started expressing concern over my emotional instability. So that was it. Lily wasn't just a mistress. She was a collaborator. The white glove and the catalyst that Lucas and Margaret had brought in, while trying to fully seize control of the family's financial power and push me, the obstacle, out of the way. Lucas was very pleased with my docility. He began to speak of his concern for me even more often. A few days later, he brought home a refined, middle-aged man, Evelyn. This is Dr. Chen, a well-known psychology specialist. I've noticed that ever since that incident, you've been depressed and not sleeping well. Let Dr. Chen take a look at you and help you adjust. Then I can be at ease. Dr. Chen smiled warmly and handed me his business card. The clinic listed on it was Heart Group's long-term provider for employee psychological assistance services. I looked at him, then at the concern in Lucas's eyes, concern that allowed no refusal, and nodded. All right, I'll listen to you. The evaluation took place on a bright, sunny afternoon. Dr. Chen asked many questions about my emotions, my views on the miscarriage, how much I supported Lucas's career, whether I felt overwhelmed by stress. I answered truthfully, calmly, even with a hint of detachment. A week later, the report came out. Moderate depressive tendencies, accompanied by anxiety symptoms and mild decision-making impairment. Recommendation: sufficient rest and reduce stressors, particularly avoidance of complex financial decision-making, to prevent aggravating the psychological burden. Margaret held the report, sighing, though her eyes were sharp. Evelyn, you see, even the doctor says so. The family trust matters are complicated and draining. In your current state, how could you manage them properly? Why don't you hand over the management authority for now and let Lucas and me take care of it temporarily? Focus on recovering, that's what matters most. Lucas held my hand, his voice gentle but carrying the weight of steel. Sweetheart, this is for your own good. Just sign it. Authorize Mom and me to handle the trust's day-to-day decisions. Once you're better, we'll give it back to you. If you don't sign, I'm really afraid you won't be able to hold on. His fingers tightened, pressing painfully against my knuckles. I looked at the thick stack of documents on the table, the trust management transfer agreement. The clauses were meticulous, stripping me completely out of decision-making authority, leaving me with only a pitiful share of distributions. The signature line sat empty. Okay, I heard myself say. They exchanged a glance. A flash of victory passed between them. I picked up the pen, flipped to the final page, then paused. From the side, I took a blank sheet of A4 paper. But I have one condition. I quickly wrote several lines, my handwriting clear and firm, as a condition of this delegation. The principal, myself, may, during the delegation period, provide conclusive evidence recognized by an authoritative third-party institution proving that the trustee, Lucas, has committed material marital misconduct, including but not limited to infidelity or transfer of marital assets. Upon such recognition, this delegation agreement shall automatically terminate. All management authority shall immediately revert to the principal, and the trustee shall bear corresponding legal liability. I placed the page behind the final page of the agreement and slid the entire stack toward Lucas. Take a look. If that's fine, I'll sign. Lucas frowned slightly and scanned the addendum. He clearly regarded it as a weak, emotional last struggle. Evidence of marital misconduct? He was likely confident in his ability to erase all traces. He glanced at Margaret. She gave an almost imperceptible nod. You worry too much, Lucas said with a tolerant smile, shaking his head. Fine, add it, then, so long as you focus on getting better. He didn't scrutinize the wording, nor did he notice my emphasis on authoritative third-party recognition and conclusive evidence. He signed the main document. I signed as well. Then I scanned the addendum with a portable scanner, saving a clear copy to my encrypted cloud storage and my ghost email account. The paper original, I folded neatly and slipped into the inner pocket of my wallet. Lucas collected the signed main documents, thoroughly satisfied. Not long after, I noticed several new security upgrade cameras installed in the house. The living room, the dining room, even the hallway leading to the bedrooms. The angles were carefully chosen, covering nearly all shared spaces. Lucas explained, "The neighborhood's been a bit unsafe lately. This way we can relax. Don't overthink it." I didn't overthink it. I began my performance directly in front of the most prominent camera in the living room. I would sit by the window for long stretches, staring outside blankly, my eyes hollow. Sometimes I covered my face with my hands, my shoulders trembling slightly, as if I were crying. When Margaret called to check on me, I answered in a timid, wavering voice, "Mom, I'm fine, just a little weak." Thank you and Lucas for handling the trust matters. I shaped myself in front of the cameras into a thoroughly broken, powerless creature, completely dependent on their mercy. When Lucas came home, he seemed even more satisfied with my fragility, a sense of total control shining in his eyes. He would even hold me gently and say, "That's good. Be a good girl." Everyone assumed I was firmly under their thumb, slowly withering away. They had no idea that every camera had become a tool for my reverse surveillance. While performing weakness, I memorized every slip of their guard, every mocking comment about my condition. Their certainty that I was harmless only revealed more and more of their vulnerabilities. Lily's patience was shorter than I had expected. Perhaps it was because I retreated too thoroughly, or perhaps because she sensed victory was within reach. A photo appeared abruptly on her secret social media account and was quickly screenshot and spread. In it, Lucas, Lily, and Margaret stood together in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of a luxurious apartment, smiling at the night view. The caption read, "Finally, standing in the right place." No names were mentioned, yet the implication was terrifyingly clear. Public opinion quietly began to stir. Some gossip accounts hinted, "Financial prodigy shows true feelings." Original wife rumored to have emotional issues retreats, or strong alliance. Hart family may welcome a new lady of the house. Comments started expressing sympathy for Lily, true love unrecognized, and mocking me, holding on to a position I shouldn't. The media smelled blood like sharks. One day, I went out alone and was surrounded at the apartment's entrance. Cameras pointed at me, microphones thrust forward. Questions were sharp. "Mrs. Hart, what do you think about Miss Lily's photo? Rumors say your marriage with Mr. Lucas is long over. Is that true? You haven't been seen in public much lately. Is it for health reasons?" Under the blinding flash of cameras, I looked at those anxious faces. My heart pounded heavily, but my face betrayed no emotion. I said just one sentence, clear and audible to every microphone, "I wish them well." Then, escorted by bodyguards, I got into my car and left. That phrase was instantly interpreted as the wife silently retreats. Resigned grace. Margaret called later, her tone unusually gentle. "Evelyn, you handled that well today. You know how to put the family first. I know it's unfair to you, but some things must be endured for the sake of the family." That evening, Lucas came home, unprecedentedly bringing me a bouquet. "You've been wrong today," he said, kissing my forehead. "Wait a little, once the storm passes. I'll take care of everything." Take care of everything? Was he planning to arrange the divorce, leaving me with nothing? Or to worsen my condition so I'd vanish completely? I took the flowers and placed them in the vase. Back to him. Voice airy, "Yes, I understand." A few days later, Lily coincidentally ran into me at a high-end beauty salon. She seemed freshly finished with a treatment, radiant, and stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "Evelyn, what a coincidence," she said, her gaze like a knife against my face. "Not sleeping well lately? Looking pale. Understandable, when your mind is full. How could you rest?" She leaned closer, lowering her voice so only we could hear. "You know, some things, once they're gone, they're gone. Like that child, you couldn't keep it. And some people? When it's time for them to leave, they must leave." Every word was a hot iron rod, stabbing the bloodiest corner of my memory. My lower abdomen convulsed with phantom pain. I could almost hear my own blood rushing backward, but my face didn't move, not a muscle. I just stared at her, at that young, beautiful face, written with greed and malice. Then, I said nothing and walked past her. Once outside, seated in the car, I finally pulled the tiny recording device disguised as a lipstick tube from my pocket and pressed the stop button. "Thank you, Lily, for the evidence you just handed me. At home, I checked the back end of our home network. Lucas didn't know I retained top-level access. I found a strange device attempting to access the family server with advanced privileges. It was targeting folders with non-core but sensitive trust transaction files. The device ID traced to Lily's laptop. Greed. She couldn't wait any longer. She had reached out. Fine. A hand extended is easier to cut off. Timing requires both patience and orchestration. I contacted a former subordinate, long since departed from the Hart Group, now working in risk control at an international bank. I revealed nothing, merely framed a question as industry inquiry. If a small private medical foundation's historical accounts showed certain irregularities, I hinted at a few keywords, and suspicious funds recently attempted to flow into associated accounts via complex channels. How would a bank's risk control system typically respond? The reply came quickly. Such situations usually trigger a secondary alert, automatically freezing the main accounts for compliance review, especially if the foundation had appeared on the bank's internal watch list, for example. A large, suspicious investment 3 years ago that had been rejected. Perfect. I did nothing. I merely remembered that long-forgotten, rejected investment record and the risk control traces it left behind. The rest, I left to the logic of the system itself. 1 week later, Lucas received a call at breakfast. His face instantly turned iron gray. What? Frozen? Who authorized this? System auto alert? Impossible. He threw down his chopsticks and paced the living room, calling one number after another, rage shifting to panic. Margaret panicked as well, repeatedly asking, what happened? How could Lily's foundation account be frozen? Was there a mistake? I sipped my oatmeal leisurely, watching the scene unfold. Finally, Lucas hung up and spun toward me, eyes sharp as if trying to peel my skin away. Evelyn, was this you? Did you contact the bank? I put down my spoon, wiped my mouth with a napkin, and looked at him calmly, my gaze still. Me? I haven't handled any of this for a long time. Didn't you say I should rest and stay away from these stress sources? I paused, then added, but you and I both know, the bank's risk control system doesn't care who triggers the alert. It doesn't recognize people. It recognizes rules. Rules don't recognize people. I repeated softly. Lucas stared at me, truly studying me for the first time. The rage in his eyes slowly shifted to astonishment and doubt. For the first time, he realized that the pale, fragile-looking woman before him might not be completely out of the game. You, he began, mouth opening, but no words came out. Margaret shrieked sharply. Then what now? Lily's side has a broken cash flow. Several projects are waiting for funds. Evelyn, didn't you have connections at the bank before? Go make a call. I stood, my tone gentle but distant. Mom, in my current condition, how could I make a call? The doctor said I need to avoid stress. Besides, calling the bank won't help, it'll just create more trouble. I turned to Lucas. Honey, you have the connections. Surely you can handle it. I'm going upstairs to rest. My head is spinning a bit. I turned and walked up the stairs, feeling the two burning yet icy gazes on my back. Soon, Lily's call came through. I paused at the stairwell corner, listening to Lucas's voice, tight with restrained anger. I know. I'm figuring it out. Calm down. All right. I'll settle the divorce quickly. Get the money. That's it. Stop pushing. Divorce. Finally, he had said the word aloud. Under pressure, Lily's control began to falter, pushing harder at every step. And Lucas, overwhelmed and frantic, for the first time showed visible exhaustion and irritation. I returned to the guest room, closed the door, and leaned against it, exhaling softly. Lily's aggressive pressure had accelerated the process. A month later, Lucas placed a document in front of me, the divorce agreement. The terms were generous: a modest suburban apartment, an ordinary car, and a fixed compensation amount equivalent to a fraction of the trust's annual yield. My premarital assets, the majority of marital property, and the trust rights I was entitled to? Not a word. Evelyn, he said, sitting across from me, dressed in a tailored suit, his expression the cold calm of formality, tinged with patronizing pity. Let's part amicably. Sign. Take what's offered, and you'll have a secure life. Continuing to fight won't help you. Your condition needs rest. Making a scene would harm your reputation. Margaret sat nearby, silent this time, her gaze cold. appraising me like a discarded object to be processed. I picked up the agreement and turned each page slowly. The sunlight fell across the paper, highlighting clauses thick with calculation and cruelty. I reached the last page, the signature line. I looked up at Lucas. He was sure that signing was my only option. I picked up the pen. The tip touched the paper, flowing smoothly as I signed, Evelyn Hart. Relief flashed across Lucas's eyes. The faintest, almost victorious smile curled his lips. Margaret straightened imperceptibly. I set the pen down, pulled my tablet, unlocked it, and held the screen toward Lucas. I've signed the agreement. My voice even, as if stating the weather. At the same time, under the marriage law and relevant judicial interpretations, regarding your significant marital misconduct, the malicious concealment or transfer of marital property, and conspiracy to infringe on my legal rights, I have filed a property preservation application and a divorce at fault claim with the court. On the tablet screen was a clear email sent successfully interface. The recipient was the court's dedicated filing mailbox. The attachments were extensive: the miscarriage consent form, signed by Lucas, and the complete medical record evidence chain. Timeline of intimate interactions between Lucas and Lily, with partial communications recovered from my old phone. Preliminary analysis report on abnormal fund flows in the New Genesis Foundation, pointing to Lily's account and possible laundering by Lucas. Network logs showing Lily's unauthorized attempts to access family trust documents. Recordings of Lucas and Margaret coercing me to sign trust delegation documents under the guise of psychological issues, including scanned addenda. Recording of Lucas admitting on the phone he would settle the divorce quickly after Lily's funds were frozen. Complete files on the problematic investment I had rejected 3 years ago, proving Lucas's prior intent to channel benefits through suspicious channels. Each document highlighted source, date, and critical information. Lucas's face drained of color visibly. He stood abruptly, knocking over his coffee cup, the dark liquid spreading across the expensive carpet. His eyes fixed on the screen, then shot toward me, filled with shock, fury, and a hint of fear. When did you? His voice was hoarse. I've always been here, I said, putting the tablet away and standing tall, looking down at him. Signing was a gesture to you and the court. Filing the lawsuit is my claim to fairness. Margaret stood as well, her finger trembling as she pointed at me. Evelyn, you've lost your mind. Are you trying to ruin Lucas? Pull those files back. Mom, I said, cold for the first time. Leave the law to the law. As for who will ruin him, my gaze swept over Lucas's pale, stunned face. He's doing it himself. I picked up the signed copy of my divorce agreement and walked out of the living room. Behind me came Lucas's low, beastly growl and Margaret's sharp curses. I knew soon the court's asset preservation order would arrive, freezing relevant assets. Lucas would receive summonses. The board would demand explanations. The media would catch wind. The days ahead would be stormy. The court's freezing order came faster than Lucas had imagined. Not only his personal accounts, but several shell companies closely linked to the New Genesis Foundation and Lily were affected. His cash flow instantly tightened. The board sent inquiries demanding explanations about private litigation and ethical risks potentially affecting company interests. His carefully cultivated perfect elite persona now bore its first deep cracks. Lily was summoned by regulatory authorities. Issues with her foundation were formally exposed. She tried to turn to Lucas for help, but even he was vulnerable. Their alliance began to fracture under pressure. The media, sensing blood in the water, pounced. Initially, minor financial gossip, soon spreading to social news. Headlines grew more sensational: Hart family heir embroiled in marital scandal, control and betrayal behind the elite mask, mysterious woman Lily involved in suspicious fund flows. Lucas began to lose sleep. The dark circles under his eyes deepened by the day. His gaze toward me was bloodshot, filled with incredulous malice, but more than that, there was a creeping, uncontrollable panic. He tried to talk to me, shifting from commands to threats, finally resorting to pleading, begging me to drop the lawsuit. We can work this out. I refused all communication. I blocked his phone, blocked his social accounts. I spoke only through my lawyer. Margaret arranged to meet me again, this time at a discreet cafe. She looked significantly worn, but her eyes remained sharp, attempting a final push of pressure and negotiation. Evelyn, things have gotten this far, it benefits no one. She softened her tone, even adding a hint of pleading. Lucas knows he's in the wrong. As for Lily, we can make her disappear completely. All you have to do is withdraw the lawsuit, stop pursuing it, and the trust management rights return to you immediately. I'll even add extra compensation, enough for you to live in comfort for life. Why risk both sides losing? I stirred my coffee, remaining silent. She bit her lip and delivered what she clearly thought was a killer blow. Even if you hold no sentiment, think of the child. That was the only bond between you two. After all this, the child in heaven wouldn't rest easy. A child. She dared bring up the child. I lifted my head, looking her squarely in the eyes. No trace of feigned meekness or vulnerability remained, only a frozen, merciless lake of ice. Margaret. I called her by name for the first time. You're wrong. Between Lucas and me, there never was any bond. As for that child, I paused deliberately, each word falling like a shard of ice hitting stone. He was abandoned by his father's own signature. And you were his accomplice. You have no right to even mention him. Margaret's face drained instantly of color. I stood, took a manila folder from my bag, and placed it gently in front of her. By the way, this is for you. Preliminary copies of documents regarding your early money laundering through overseas art galleries and using family charity channels to funnel benefits. The originals and a more detailed evidence chain have already been submitted to the tax authorities and the Economic Investigation Bureau. Consider this fair warning. I didn't wait for her collapsing expression or quivering lips. I turned and left, stepping into the sunlight outside. I put on sunglasses, shutting out the glare and the crumbling world behind me. Lily's fall came astonishingly fast. As the investigation deepened, layer by layer of her new Genesis Foundation's corruption was exposed: illegal fundraising, misappropriation of charitable funds, fake medical projects, and siphoning assets through related transactions. Every claim was backed by solid evidence. Multiple accounts under her name were frozen, properties seized. Media outlets exposed her dual identity: on one side, Lucas's beloved confidant and charitable socialite; on the other, the actual controller of several shell companies with links to underground banks. The carefully curated socialite image shattered overnight. When she attempted to leave the country, she was stopped at the airport. An exit restriction had already been imposed. Cornered. She even called my lawyer, tearful and desperate, willing to testify against Lucas in exchange for leniency, begging for a way out. My response, relayed through my lawyer, was one sentence: you are not entitled to negotiate. You are not entitled to plead. Her last hope destroyed. Before any formal indictment, she was photographed looking exhausted and disheveled on the streets. Her public accounts closed, stripped from all her former activities. The friends and associates who once circled her vanished without a trace. Social death. Before the legal judgment, the judgment of society had already arrived: scorn, ostracism, and oblivion. I sat in my living room, scrolling through the last news update about her on my tablet. The headline read, "Goddess of Inspiration False. Suspected of multiple economic crimes." The accompanying images showed her once smiling face beside a photo captured by paparazzi, gaunt and vacant-eyed. Lucas's reckoning was comprehensive and devastating. After intense boardroom debate, the board voted to remove him from all positions for personal actions, severely damaging the group's reputation and causing enormous legal and financial risks. The statement was harsh, effectively cutting off his future at top-tier institutions. His stock options were frozen due to ongoing litigation and potential compensation claims. Banks called day and night to collect loans. Former friends and business partners, once close, now avoided him entirely. Margaret herself became implicated, investigated for economic crimes. With assets frozen, powerless to shield him, the mother-son duo finally shattered after a fierce argument. Lucas reportedly smashed his mother's most prized set of antique porcelain. He tried to contact me repeatedly, through many numbers. Sometimes it was hysterical cursing, sometimes near psychotic sobbing and pleas, claiming he was wrong, regretted it, that losing me made him realize my worth, begging for one more chance. I never answered, each call blocked, until one day, my lawyer informed me that Lucas, through intermediaries, desperately wanted to meet me one last time to apologize in person. I paused, then agreed, at the lawyer's conference room, with cameras and legal supervision present. He arrived. In mere months, he looked 10 years older, his suit no longer crisp, his eyes heavy with shadows and inescapable anxiety. The once commanding aura of the elite had completely vanished. He saw me, his eyes flickering, then rushed forward, attempting to grasp my hand. Evelyn, my lawyer, stepped forward, placing a subtle barrier. I remained seated, calm, studying him. He froze, slowly lowering his hand, voice dry and hoarse. Evelyn, I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. I regret it. Every day I regret it. Can we start over? I don't want anything else. I just want you back, Lucas. I interrupted, voice even. If you're here for the lawsuit, speak with my lawyer. If you're here to say this. I paused. There's no need. Why? He suddenly became agitated, eyes red. Just because of Lily? I've cut ties with her completely. That child, we can still have children. Evelyn, I know you still care about me, or else you wouldn't. No. My voice was clear and icy, slicing through all his self-deceptions. I stopped caring the moment you signed that miscarriage consent form. The moment you celebrated a new beginning with Lily. The moment you and your mother schemed to destroy me, to turn me into nothing. I stopped caring. I looked at his face, pale and stricken, and continued, I'm here today. Not to hear your confessions, not to give you another chance. I'm here to make one thing clear, and to make sure you never forget. I stood up and walked toward him, stopping a single step away, staring directly into his ashen eyes. What you've lost is not a disposable accessory you could summon at will. What you've lost is someone who once truly loved you, yet ultimately saw through you, and had the ability to drag you into the abyss. Your regret isn't because you love me, it's because you lost control, lost your advantage, lost the dignity you relied on for survival. Your apology is worthless. Your remorse is nothing but the wail of a defeated man. Our relationship ended long ago. Not today, long ago. It ended. Having said that, I no longer looked at his sudden collapse, barely able to stand, but instead nodded to my lawyer and walked straight out of the conference room. Stepping out of the building, the early autumn wind brushed past me, cool, yet refreshing. My phone vibrated. A message from Essen, the discreet yet deeply connected independent financial advisor I had consulted while preparing the lawsuit. He had provided crucial legal and financial support. Professional, reliable, always maintaining a perfect balance of distance and respect. The message was brief. Everything smooth? Need me to pick you up? I replied, smooth. No, I want to walk a bit myself. He responded simply, okay. No extra words. No intrusive concern, yet it carried a solid, reassuring presence. Nothing like Lucas's suffocating, controlling gentleness. I walked into the city crowd. The sunlight was warm. The final reckoning came in late autumn. The court's judgment was delivered, based on the comprehensive chain of evidence: Lucas's marital misconduct, affair, cohabitation with another, malicious concealment and diversion of marital assets, coerced termination of pregnancy, not criminal, but pivotal in establishing fault, and the notarized trust delegation agreement with my added clause. I won the vast majority of my claims. The family trust's control, per the additional clause, automatically reverted to my name. Most marital assets, multiple properties, investments, shares, were lawfully divided, with me receiving the primary portion. Lucas was required to pay substantial divorce damages. The portion of funds Lucas and Lily conspired to misappropriate was ordered recovered. Lucas himself, implicated in the investigation into Lily's foundation's economic crimes, despite his desperate attempts to disassociate. The financial evidence was undeniable. Faced criminal charges, was released on bail, and had his career effectively destroyed. Margaret's own assets were frozen. Her once glorious social standing collapsed. Lily faced a long prison sentence. I exited the courthouse. No reporters blocked my path. I chose the discreet side exit. Essen's car was nearby. He leaned against it, silently waiting. I approached. He opened the car door for me. Where to? He asked. I thought for a moment. Let's visit the new office. The car merged into traffic. I watched the cityscape blur past, the streets I had once walked with Lucas. The corners filled with false happiness and real pain, receding into the distance. No exhilaration. No emotional release. Not even fatigue. Just a deep, tidal calm. The emptiness left after the storm recedes. It was over. All the harm had been placed on the scale of justice and given its due judgment. All the power had returned to its rightful place. Lucas's collapse was ongoing, silent, and absolute. He tried to appeal, but the evidence was airtight. He attempted a final struggle in the media, posting long statements clarifying his years of pressure and helplessness, hinting that I was calculating and premeditative. But public opinion had long since shifted. After his and Lily's scandal and the miscarriage truth were exposed, sympathy completely sided with me. His defenses were hollow, attracting only mockery and scorn. His former social circle shunned him entirely. No one dared hire him. Former friends treated him like a plague. Bank debts and compensation demands suffocated him, forcing the sale of what little assets remained. Occasionally spotted in a cheap bar, gaunt, muttering to himself, he tried to contact me, sending endless confessions, stalking places I might appear, but I had already severed every tie. My social and professional spheres were completely beyond his reach. He reportedly developed serious mental health issues, alternating between mania and depression, sustained by medication. His health deteriorated further. My rebirth, however, was calm and solid. I returned to finance, not as Mrs. Hart, but on my own, using my portion of the assets and the trust capital now under my control. I founded an independent investment studio. I focused on female entrepreneurship, healthcare, especially reproductive health and autonomy, and tech innovation. For the first time, I directed wealth and resources entirely according to my own judgment. I no longer avoided the past. At a small industry forum, discussing investment philosophy, I calmly referenced my experiences. I invest in companies that prioritize female autonomy and health because I deeply understand what it means for a woman to have her bodily decisions stripped away. Economic independence and financial power are foundational to safeguarding this autonomy. No sentimentality, no accusations, just calm, clear truth. Silence followed briefly, then genuine, respectful applause. Essen became a reliable partner, sometimes a companion. Our balance was precise, independent, supportive, respectful of each other's space and choices. No suffocating possession, no false control. Just two mature individuals walking side by side, sharing the journey, appreciating the view. He would occasionally bring a late-night snack when I worked late, never interfering. I would provide financial insight when he faced difficult cases, never meddling in legal specifics. Together, relaxed, apart, thriving. Spring came again. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new office, overlooking the city's vibrant streets. The space, prime location, open view, decorated to my taste, minimalist, bright, empowered. Essen knocked and entered, handing me a coffee. Meeting with the Female Health Innovation Fund this afternoon. Materials ready. Thank you. I sipped the coffee. He stood beside me, looking out the window. Looking at what? The future, I said. Looking back. No pity, no nostalgia. The past pains, betrayals, despair, and struggles, they remain, but they no longer hurt. They have become part of me, making me sharper, stronger, and wiser in protecting what I cherish. I control my wealth, my career, my body, my emotions, my life. All the harm has been settled. All the power has been restored. Emotions? I no longer need them to dictate me, but I can perceive happiness with a serene clarity. This is my story, a story of falling, breaking, then forging myself anew, rising above everything. Satisfying? Perhaps. More importantly, I am free.